Hi, I'm attorney Rob Levine from Rob Levine Law and Rob Levine Legal Solutions. So our law firm started 25 years ago. 25 years ago, it was just me, one person, and I actually had two jobs. I worked for Gem Plumbing and Heating, and so I was their in-house counsel, and part of my responsibilities were real estate acquisition. I was responsible for their accounts receivable department. I was responsible for growth of the plumbing company along with their executive board. I sat on their executive board. I wore many hats. Over the years that I were there, when I started, we grew from about $5 million a year and 50 team members, and we grew them to about 300 team members, and they were doing about $40 million a year. So some explosive growth in that 7-year period that I spent with them. Simultaneously, I owned the law firm, and at the beginning I owned it with a partner, Anthony Gemma, who ended up not staying, and he stayed with Gem Plumbing when I left Gem Plumbing after 7 years. And so in the beginning, we did a little of everything, whatever walked in the door. So I did some criminal work, I did some bankruptcy work, I did personal injury, I did landlord and tenant law, I did pretty much everything. And then slowly, I did real estate, and slowly over time we niched it down. And so really what became big for us was real estate law at the time, and then personal injury. And so real estate was doing great for us. And this was before 2008 when we had the crash. And so what happened was we were doing subprime mortgages. So a lot of refinances, and we were doing them all over the country as mail-aways. And then one day, the market crashed. I'm sure those of you who remember 2008, it was literally overnight. I walked into the office, we were doing hundreds of closings a month, and we had a stretch Cadillac limo, which we used to take mortgage brokers out in, had a sales team, we did networking, presentations, and we were getting in a tremendous volume of closings. And then the next day, after the crash, literally it dropped 90% plus. And we kind of really focused on growing the personal injury division. And so back then, I started as one person in the law firm, then it was 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. And pre-2020, we were up to about 100 people doing personal injury. When COVID happened, we lost about 25% of the law firm. We laid people off because we didn't know what was going to happen with COVID, how long would it last, what would the experience be like. You can't really have a personal injury case when you're quarantined to being in your home. Our vendors worked with us phenomenally, cut prices on advertising on TV, billboards, which really helped us prepare for what we didn't know was going to be the future. And then what was very interesting was after we cut the team, we still had the same number of cases. And we wondered, how are we going to survive? Like, how are we going to run all those cases? And that's when we decided to go international. And we hired some international team members and spent a lot of time on training. We've always done training. I'm a huge believer in training. So I'm an instructor. I was an instructor for a long time for a ski patrol, and I was an instructor for EMT. And so I've been teaching a lot of different things. I've taught in college. For years, I've taught in different aspects. And so we brought that education component into the law firm 15 years ago. It's been 25 years now, where we really focused on education of our attorneys, of our case managers, really of the entire team, which is how we've been able to scale and grow and really provide great customer service, great legal skills, because we believe in training. This past year, we sent 2 people to the Jerry Spence Academy. One went to the advanced school and one went to the first level of their class on really perfecting their litigation skills, because we obviously do trials. So education has always been important, and as we grew that international, we really built out an academy to train people internationally, Colombia, Peru, the Philippines, and be able to provide phenomenal legal set skills and customer service, and still be able to handle the problem that we were facing with COVID. So as time went on over the last 5 years, we've continued to scale and continue to grow. So going back we were doing personal injury, we added in Social Security disability, we added veterans disability, and those are really our 3 areas of law now. A month or 2 ago, we added in doing workers' compensation. For years, we did workers' compensation in the beginning as we grew personal injury, and then we started outsourcing it, and we decided to really focus on workers' compensation again in-house, and we hired an attorney with 15 years of workers' compensation experience, and we've been growing that whole division. So when we decide to focus on something, right, that becomes, right, our ultimate focus, and we really look on how we scale it, grow it, and provide great legal service. And so that's the key, right, to growing the law firm. When you think about a law firm, you have to think of it as a business, right? So yes, it's the unique practice of law, which no other business does. But when you break down all the pieces that bring a business together and make a business successful, a law firm is no different than any other business. Each business has its unique operation. You think about a car manufacturer. So they're unique. They make cars, right? You think of a restaurant. They serve food. But they all have the same basic pieces that come together. Number 1, marketing, right? You have to be able to build a brand, get people to either call you or come to visit you, depending on the type of business you have. You have to drive the consumer to be able to know who you are. So when it comes time to making a choice, they remember your name. It's something we refer to as TOMA, top of mind awareness. So when someone has an accident, or in any business, they have a need for whatever your business is, that name that you've branded and created in people's minds, it comes to them. It creates top of mind awareness. It allows them to think of the name of your business, recall it at their time of need, and they select you, right? So you have aided recall, which means if I said to you on the street, name 3 personal injury law firms for me, and they can't think of the name of your law firm, but then I said to you, have you heard of any of these firms, A, B, and C? And they say, oh yeah, I've heard of them before. That's aided recall. And so what we have to remember in marketing is people often search in order to find the law firm they're looking for. So they see billboards, they see TV, they hear radio, but when they go to make a decision, while they remember names of firms, they might not just choose to hire one of the names that was top of mind awareness. They might do a search first, or maybe they can't really remember any name. So when they do the Google search, and at the top we have local service ads, we have pay-per-click, we have the map pack, we have organic search, which matches what they put in for keywords, then different law firms come up. Often people select the aided recall. So even though I didn't know who I wanted to use when I started the search, when I see the names, and this goes for any business, I see the names that come up inside Google, I say, oh, I remember that law firm. So a law firm that chooses not to do branding, they just do digital, SEO, pay-per-click, LSA, but they're not building a brand that people remember that connect them. They have a harder time competing with someone who's branded, right? So that's not to say they can't get business. They have a phenomenal website and people will hire them. But if you put 2 firms up against each other, let's say they're the top 2 that come up in local service ads, and one firm is recognized and I remember them. Oh yeah, I remember them. They did this for our community. They had this commercial on TV. I saw their billboard. And the other one has no brand. And the 2 websites, I look at them both, I'm more likely to choose the branded law firm or branded company. So when you're thinking about your marketing efforts and where to spend your money, it's important to think, right, about building your brand. It doesn't happen overnight. When I first started 25 years ago, we called the chickening out period 6 to 9 months. So that's how long we said it took to start to build a brand, to get name recognition, to spend money before you saw people remembering who you were, calling you, and getting a result. Now, I would tell you it probably takes a year and a half, maybe 2 years, because there's so many more commercials that people see every day, so much more competition, so many more ways to find someone. 25 years ago, there wasn't streaming. That didn't exist. So we had broadcast TV. That was the only way to watch us on TV. Today we have what we call cord cutters. So they're not watching broadcast TV. They're streaming it on their phone. And so because there were so many different ways to reach a customer, and there were so many more people trying to reach a customer, it's created way more competition in the marketplace. So you want to make money. You're thinking about scaling your law firm. There's so many options. How much do I spend? Where do I go? What do I do? So that's a common question that we get. And so I would tell you that it really depends on what market you're in. It depends on your personal living expenses and how much you need to be able to survive today, how much you want to take out of your firm and spend on your personal life versus put back in. So there's always going to be the big three expenses to grow your firm, right? There's marketing, there's people, and then your general overhead. So if you have 100%, right, is the total pie of what you make as revenue, and you have three sections that come out. So I have to pay my team to be able to produce cases, answer the phone, and handle everything. I have to pay for my marketing expense to either build top-of-mind awareness, build a brand, or have a CTA, a call to action, get people to hire my law firm, and then my general overhead, my rent, my building, my copy machines, my paper, whatever it is that I have to spend money on to make my business run, make my law firm run. So those are your big three, but then what's left at the bottom? That's your profit, right? So what you have to decide is, how much profit do I want to earn each year, right, in order to continue to scale and grow? If you take out a large amount of profit, you reduce the amount of money that you have to spend on marketing and scale or grow your law firm, which means you probably have less to spend on your team to handle the increase in cases that you're growing. And then your general overhead, if you're running a tight business, should stay relatively stable. There's not a lot of increase there. But what do we have to consider? We have to consider the speed at what we want to grow our law firm and the time to recoup the money, because there's a delay. If I open a personal injury case today, I've already spent the money on marketing. So that money's gone. I have to spend money to make the phone ring. So I'm not recouping that for a long time. And then I need the team to answer the phone and the team to run the case until I settle the case. So remember, whether or not we're on pre-litigation or litigation even extends that timeline further. So the times that I just gave you are generally for pre-litigation, right? We're settling that case without filing a lawsuit. So every jurisdiction is different, and some are really fast, and mine happens to be, or one of mine, happens to be really slow. Rhode Island takes years, right? Definitely not resolving a case in under 3 years. And if you want to go to a jury trial, it could take 5 years to get a jury trial in Rhode Island. Now, Massachusetts, which we're in also, is definitely faster than Rhode Island. But depending on your jurisdiction, that's your carrying cost, right? So when you start spending money up front, you have your marketing cost, your intake, your cost of your people, the length of the operation. You have to think that you have to have enough money put aside to carry that until you settle those cases. So let's just say average time to settle a case is 15 months, a year and 3 months. If you know you have a year and 3 months, you have to project forward how much you spend on marketing and your team to handle the increase in cases because you increase your marketing dollars. And if you want your profit to increase as you're growing, you have to factor that in. So what am I trying to say? I'm saying you have to build projections, right? So if you're throwing a dart at a dartboard in the dark, you're never going to hit the dartboard. So you have to know, what is your goal? What are your projections? What is it I want to accomplish? What's my growth plan? What's the plan for scaling? How many people do I need? So first is marketing costs, right? How much do I want to spend on marketing? And based on my experience and what I've seen in my law firm, that spend, let's say increase of $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. As I increase that spend on a monthly level, how much more can I expect my phone to ring? And then based on my phone ringing, what can I expect in conversion of cases? Because often you talk to marketing companies and they talk about impressions and leads. As far as I'm concerned, that's bullshit, right? So that's great, I'm getting impressions, people are seeing my name, okay, so I'm building some branding. And yes, it's great that I'm getting leads, but that doesn't make me more money. So let's talk about making money and how we put that into our projections. There's only 3 ways for a law firm to increase its revenue. So we have revenue at the top, profit at the bottom, and the big 3 expenses in between plus our profit. And so I want to make more money. How do I make more money? Number 1, I bring more cases in the door. That's not leads, signed cases, right, that I can settle and make money off of. 2, I increase the value of those cases. It's what we refer to as medical management, making sure that we're building the investigation of the case up front, we're medically managing the client to making sure they get the right treatment, and that we really drive the value of that case, right, to increase our average fee, our average client settlement over time, right? And 3, we control our expenses. And so by having control over the expenses and making sure that we're being smart about where we're spending our money, such as hiring an international team member versus a US team member. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't have any US team members, but you need to have a balance, because this international is going to save you half off the cost of this a US team member. And so as I control my expenses, it allows me to drive more money into my big 3, right? Those 3 main expenses that drive the firm. And so we know we have 3 things we have to focus on. So we're going to spend X number of dollars on marketing. So then bringing in more cases is 2 pieces. It's marketing and then intake. I can tell you, as someone who has a 55-person intake department and does intake consulting and helps law firms all over the country on growing and fixing their intake, right? It's crucial. That's the in-between. That's the connection between our marketing dollars and the number of cases we have. If we have a hole, right, in intake, that means we're losing money, because we're spending it on marketing and we're not optimizing the number of cases that we're signing to increase our revenue on the other end when we settle cases. So there are lots of things to look for in your intake department. So number 1, we want to look at our conversion rate, right? Our wanted to signed cases. To me, that's the most important number to look at. What does that actually mean? So it means marketing is working, our number of leads have increased, right? And they're the right kinds of leads. Because remember, there's lots of things you can do to make the phone ring. If we make the phone ring by advertising about insurance keywords and property damage keywords, we can get lots of calls, but they're not necessarily injured, they don't necessarily have a bodily injury claim, and they just want to get their car fixed, or they have questions about insurance. That's not going to turn into a case, and that's not going to drive revenue. So we have to make sure our marketing is focused on bringing in the right client, right? Our ICP, our ideal client profile. So we make sure we know what kind of client we want to attract. And there are some law firms, maybe it's yours, that's boutique. You don't want a soft tissue injury case. You only want catastrophic accidents. Then you need to really focus on what type of marketing you're doing to drive the phone to ring to bring in catastrophic cases. So we've identified our marketing dollars. It's working. Our phone is ringing and is bringing in the right cases. So what's next? I answer the phone. Thanks for calling Rob Levine Law. How can I make your day better? And so I have someone on the phone. I have the opportunity to take this client that's a potential client that's a lead and turn them into a case. So what's first, right? If we're looking at just KPIs, it's wanted and signed, right? But obviously what's first from the intake perspective is empathy, it's compassion, and it's listening. We listen to the client and let them tell their story, right? So some people are great historians and you're going to get a lot of information. Some people are not good at telling the story and you're going to have to pull it out of them. But you don't want to be robotic. You don't want your intake people to have a script. We don't believe in scripts in my law firm. We believe in training. So we train to make sure you know how to have that conversation, right? The simple thing to think of is your friend calls you up and says, hey, I got into a car accident. Can I get your name and number? How did the accident happen? Where was the other person coming from? Did they have a traffic control device? Is that how you would talk to your friend? Of course not. You'd say, oh my God, Susie, that's horrible. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you okay? So that's compassion and empathy and really listening to the person, right? You want them to know that they're special, right? Not that the phone is ringing, not that there are other people you need to talk to, not that you've already talked to 10 other people today. You want them to feel unique. They are the most important person. And talking about technology, we don't want that person to be on hold. So when you answer the phone and say, thanks for calling Rob Levine Law, how can I make your day better? You don't want it to be your receptionist. So your receptionist says, please hold, click, picks up the next call. Please hold, click, picks up the next call. Goes back to the first call. Thanks for holding, how can I help you? In the interim, while they were put on hold, they hung up and they're going to call the next person. Why? Because for you, this is a business. This is something you do every day. You're used to talking to people who are injured. For the person that you put on hold, this might be the first time they've ever had a car accident, and maybe it's catastrophic. And they're reaching out to you for help based on your marketing, based on your seriousness of your ad, or your empathy, or the fact that your team cares. And then the first thing you do is, please hold, and you can barely get those words out because your receptionist is running fast to get to the next call. I'm telling you, guaranteed, if you're not measuring how many people hang up, you're getting hang-ups. Your process is like a strainer, and your strainer is full of holes. You have holes in your marketing system, you have holes in your intake system, you have holes in your operations. The key is to be honest with yourself and really figure out where the holes are and fill the holes so that as you're filling the bucket with leads, that you're not letting them fall out the holes by, for example, putting someone on hold, because nobody wants to be put on hold. So you've answered the phone, you've shown empathy, you've shown compassion, you listen to them, you've asked them about the accident. You don't need to ask a ton of questions. We really only need to determine, I guess, 3 things. Number 1, is someone else at fault for the accident? If they are, okay, good, then we have a case we can pursue. Number 2, are you injured? And number 3, you plan on treating. If you have those 3 things, you have a potential case. Did the police come to the scene? Did you go by rescue? Did you go to the emergency room? What's injured? Did the other person have insurance? Did you get out of the car? Those really aren't the questions you need to ask to make the initial determination. Is this a case I want or not? You don't want to bombard the person up front before you say to them, thanks for calling our law firm. You definitely have a case that we can help you with, and we're going to be there for you. Thanks for trusting us. You've made the right decision. Whatever it is you decide to say, and celebrate with them that you're going to take care of them. You don't want it to come after you've spent 30 minutes of asking them questions you don't need to. Ask the important questions. Qualify that they have a case. Qualify that they're injured and you can help them. And then tell them, we can help you, we can make a difference. Now, that's the wanted and signed. Wanted means I listened and I've determined you have a case that I want. You have a case that I can help you with, and I can get you money for your injuries from someone else who's at fault. Signed means on that call, or if you have to follow up with them, and the goal is one call, that's all. Right? That marketing slogan you've heard, it applies to intake. The goal is to sign them on the first call. Right? Remember I said don't put them on hold? Your intake person should not be saying, please hold, let me check with the attorney. And then you have to go to the attorney and then come back and ask more questions. The intake person should have the training to be able to screen that call and sign that person. Make the decision, yes, you have a case we want. You're going to have them sign the fee agreement. You're going to send it to them electronically while you're on the phone with them, and you're going to have them sign it. Now, if you're in a jurisdiction that requires an attorney to do that, then that's what you have to do. If you're not in a jurisdiction that requires that, then don't do it. So when we talked about technology, right, and not putting people on hold, what I'm really talking about is connecting, right, your phone system to your case management system, right? Why do we want to connect those two things together? The reason we connect them is because when the phone rings, it brings in DID, right, the phone number that they called, so we can figure out, if we're using DID numbers, which ads, right, are working versus which ads are not working. We could also be using UTM codes so that if they went from a pay-per-click ad to your website and then your website to your case management system, the UTM code is helping us track them so we don't just put it down as they came from our case management system. We know the pay-per-click ad that they came to, and it follows them throughout the process so that we're able to dial back and say, oh, this is the ad they came from. It also gives us their caller ID. The caller ID is super important because before the phone gets answered, when it rings, it scrubs immediately against our case management system. And we know, is this person's phone number in our system? It's either in our system as a customer, they're our client. It's in our system as a vendor, they're a body shop, a doctor's office, or an insurance agent. Or 3, it's not in our system. If it's not in our system, we assume it's a new client. So we treat those 3 phone numbers differently. If it's a client, then we should identify where they are in their case automatically through our system and then route the call to whoever you want them to speak to. Do they need to speak to their case manager? Do they need to speak to the attorney? Do they need to speak to your lien division, finance, whatever it is? And then we don't send that call into the intake group. We send it directly to the case manager who we know can help them. If it's a vendor, we send them to a telephone tree. Thanks for calling Rob Levine Law. If you know the number of the person you're calling, dial it now. If you don't, press 0 for assistance. None of which goes to intake, right? So obviously those are business callers, commercial callers, and they're used to phone trees and they know the extension of the person they need to talk to. So we don't want to waste our receptionist time and we don't want to waste our intake time. So that's how we route them and they get to the person they need to speak to. Our intake team, that's a locked department. The people we want them talking to are new clients. So when they answer the phone, whoever answers it never puts somebody on hold. Never, never, never. They're able to take the call, screen the call, sign the case, and then give it to somebody who can do the full intake. That's the key, right, to having your highest wanted and signed ratio. We don't overwhelm our intake department with calls they shouldn't be handling, number 1. Number 2, we make sure they speak to whoever the best person is that has the ability to listen and screen and sign their case. And so that's the key to technology. Connecting the phone system that's bringing in our DID and caller ID to our case management system so we route it into intake when it belongs in intake. So once we've done the routing, they talk to the right person, you train that person on how to overcome objections, how to have empathy, how to have compassion, how to listen, how to qualify. And your wanted and signed ratio goes up all of a sudden. So now, because we're listening properly, because we know how to overcome objections. Oh, I wasn't sure if I should hire a lawyer, maybe I should settle the case on my own. Or you know what, I was really thinking that I should call 3 law firms before I make a decision. Or, I'm not sure that I should sign without discussing it with my spouse first. There's a million objections that the other person can come up with. And the key is to train your intake person in advance of what the objections are and immediately know the best response to overcome the objection, satisfy their concern, and sign them. Again, 1 call, that's all. The more people I sign on the call, the less chasing I have to do. So if I can't overcome the objection, and then I say, okay, well, let's follow up tomorrow. the percentage of signing that case just reduce. The minute that you let them hang up without having a signed contract, you're reducing the percentage of chance of overcoming them becoming your client. Why? Well, because number one, you have runners, people who are not ethical, that are going to show up at their door, knock on their door, and offer them $100, tell them they'll take them to the body shop, drive them to the lawyer's office, drive them to the hospital. It's hard to compete against that. People don't know that shouldn't be happening. They don't know it's not ethical. And it's in every city across the United States. So speed on your end is important because you want to overcome the unethical behavior of law firms that don't care about an in-person solicitation, number one. Number two, they didn't sign with you, but they're not satisfied. That means they're still looking. So when they call someone else, and that person does a better job than your intake department, overcomes their objections, satisfies their concerns, they sign with that person. And then they ignore you when you start calling them back. So you don't want to chase clients. You want to have a great chase process for those that you just have to chase. But the key, again, one call, that's all. So what should our wanted to signed ratio be? My suggestion is you should be shooting for 95% plus. Right? So we help lots of different firms, and I've seen firms in the 70 percentile, 80 percentile. You are losing a tremendous amount of money. And there are firms that when I ask them, so what's your wanted to signed ratio? And I explain what we look at, they say, I don't really know. If you don't know, I can guarantee you it's going to be low. So the key, again, when we went back to talking about projections, right, and knowing your numbers, it's important to know in intake, what's the wanted to signed ratio? You should know, how long do my agents stay on the phone? How long is it taking them to convert a client? You should know what each individual person's statistic are. How many calls are they answering? How many calls are they converting? How many calls are they chasing? How long is their chase working? What are they doing for chase? Are they following our systemized process? All of those things in intake have to have a process and have to have a operations map that you're able to measure. Create KPIs. Intake people should be driven as salespeople. Salespeople are motivated by money. So all of our salespeople in our intake center are on commission. Commission is important because that's how you attract the right person. If you take a case manager and put them in an intake seat, a case manager is detail oriented, they dot their I's, they cross their T's, which is great skill set. But it's not what you want your intake person. Your intake person needs to have the gift for gab. They have to be able to talk to somebody, build a relationship, create a connection, qualify the case, and sign them. That's someone who's motivated by money. So yes, they need a base pay, and then you give them a commission for cases they sign. So maybe you say, the goal is to sign 8 cases in a week. And here's what you get for each case that you sign to 8. If you get to 9 cases, we increase the value of your commission, not just for the 9th, but all 8. And that resets how much they get. And then they're trying to get to 9, then they're trying to get to 10, they're trying to get to 11. So there's a minimum standard, which is what we do in everything we give bonuses on. Here's the minimum. Let's say it's 70%. If you get to 80%, it increases. 90%, it increases. So you want to always create that stretch goal. You always want them trying to get to the next level. Increase where they are to where you want them to be. People always have more capacity. The question is, can you motivate them? Is your culture helping them get to where they need to be? Are you training them? Are you really treating your law firm as a business and your team as a unit to motivate them to help you get to the next level? So your marketing department, we talked about at length, right? Really tweaking that marketing, building your top of mind awareness, building your brand, creating calls to action, and making the phone ring, and then making sure that when the phone rings, it's the right type of case. And then intake. Are we converting our leads to signed cases? Is our wanted to signed ratio at least at 95%? And that's key. If you're in the 80s, there's room for improvement. If you're at 90, there's room for improvement. You can get there, believe me, you can. Change the technology, change the training, and work with your team to get to the next level.